everybody, I'm Jona, and welcome back to another episode of Across the Board, a show where we talk about greener gaming with publishers, manufacturers, board game designers, and just everyday gamers. And today we're going to be talking about boxes, size, why does it matter? I have my boxes here and I have my assumptions about them, so maybe you can, guide me in your wisdom. I'm here with T, which I'm sorry, I totally forgot to introduce you.
That's fine. We got to it.
They work at HABA USA, and HABA is doing a lot of really neat sustainable practices in Germany. They're based in Germany. Today we're going to be talking about box size. And this is a pet peeve I have because, for example, this is one of my favorite games of all time. It's 2-player, Star Realms, tiniest little box, big impact. Like, I love this game. It is so immersive, so, it's just so competitive. I love it, okay? So, it's a giant deck of cards in a box that's the size of the giant deck of cards. Then we go here, and, Dutch Blitz is kind of the same thing. This is essentially, pretty close to what the cards are. Now we're getting into some oversizing, a little bit, but not too bad. Arboretum is a gorgeous card game. It is a bit oversized. Look at that. It's not even full. Is that insert necessary? This is an example of oversizing, I would say. And then moving on, these are all card games. Yep. I think Expedition has some little chits or something.
Yeah.
Point Salad. I just played this the other night with a couple that had never played it before. Loved it. This is an excellent card game for newbies and just quick games when you have, a couple minutes to play a game. But this is one of my worst examples of oversizing. What is the deal?
Yep.
T, what is the deal?
Well, so there's several reasons for the oversizing. And I want to start with, I don't have the same stack of games. I have a stack of games too. I came
okay.
as well. I don't have the same stack of games you have, but I have some great examples where we can talk about why some stuff's some ways. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite card games, which would be Oh My Goods. So this is actually an expansion for Oh My Goods, but it is in the same box and box size that the base game comes in.
Okay.
And so they just do a two-piece box. A two-piece box. A tuck box is, for example, Star Realms.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit. There's so much about boxes. So much about boxes. There's people that have degrees in boxes.
Oh my gosh, that's
it's
amazing.
called packaging design. It's like a thing. But
I miss my calling.
So basically, I guess we're going to start with tuck boxes versus two-piece boxes versus pizza boxes. So when you talk about a tuck box is similar to Dutch Blitz or Star Realms, both great examples that you had. This is a thinner cardboard. It's almost like a card stock, really.
Yeah.
And it's designed so that it's basically one piece of paper that is folded magically to make this box, and then it has tucks both on the bottom and the top, sometimes just on the bottom, just on the top, whatever. Also, some of them have hang tags, so I believe Dutch Blitz has a hang tab as part of the design. Yep. So it's like a classic card game box design, similar that you would get any mainstream game like Uno or that's the only mainstream game I can think of right now. But or a classic deck of cards,
Face 10
poker cards. Yeah. So those boxes are great. And Star Realms uses that box. And Star Realms can get away with that. Star Realms' business model was they wanted to make a quick game that had a quick, accessible feel, that had a very effective price point, that worked well for 2 players, and then was very easily expanded or modularized. And so their model focused on that. And so that's why they have that box. That's why they haven't really modified that box. But they also offer a lot of accessories and accoutrements that you can buy to fit your expansion of that game. So if you only need that game for 2 players, you just buy 1 copy. You got it. If you need it for 4 players, you buy 2 copies. you got it. If you want any of the expansion packs, because they sell these little like blister packs, if you want any of those, you now can no longer fit the game in the original packaging.
Gotcha.
Which means
yeah.
you might need another container. And handy dandy, they sell one that's themed and has the art of Star Realms. So that was actually a business decision on their side. And I think it's definitely paid off for them. And it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's almost equivalent to on-demand game quantity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, instead of buying excess in case I want more, or in case I get more, or in case I sleeve it, right? Because if you sleeve the cards, you can't fit them back in the original set box. Yeah. You just get the bare minimum. It is what it is. Its price point is good for that. It fits in a pocket. It fits in a backpack. It's great for travel. It's great for whatever. But then if you want nicer and fancy, they offer that as kind of like an add-on that you can purchase later.
Yeah.
So, and that's just part of their business model. And it's paying off really well for them. Your box looks a little worn down.
Yeah, actually, like you mentioned, we did buy additional copies for multiplayers, and it's in a giant Ziploc bag. So,
yep.
Yeah. A bigger
so you got a
box
different...
would actually be kind of nice, now that I'm thinking about it.
Exactly, yeah. And so the other thing with tuck boxes is because they're made of the paper that they're made of, they're actually not made to last. And it's one of those things where it's almost a decision where the company is like, honestly, we make this game so affordable and so cheap. If your copy gets worn out, just recycle it, throw it away, buy a new one.
Yeah, disposable mentality.
It's a little bit by design.
Yeah.
So when you start getting into more hobby style games, you start getting into products that are doing the two-piece boxes. And these are actually more common in Europe. Two-piece boxes are kind of the standard for mass-produced games over tuck boxes because they are more durable. They open more on their own, right? Like if you throw it in a backpack, but that's easily solved with some sort of adhesive or a rubber band, or they have these like cool book tape stuff that's pretty popular over there. But you'll notice the size is pretty. It is the size of the cards.
Sure.
There's a little bit of wiggle room. Luckily, I haven't opened this one.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of wiggle room. So if you are a sleever, you might be able to fit them sleeved. Probably not. But it's got a little cardboard insert. This is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
This is pretty standard. For a small fitting tuck box. Well, the truth of the matter is that retailers don't like this size because it gets lost, and it's really easy to have like a wall of these size games and then you just can't find them, or they're just overwhelming for customers. And then from like a manufacturer or a publisher standpoint, they also don't stand out as much to the competition. So this is an example of the same game. This is a Dutch version of Oh My Goods. And they made the decision to make the game in a bigger box. And I actually have the Dutch version because it's a bigger box, because I can fit all of my expansions in it. So I have several expansions in it, and that makes sense for me because this is a hobby game. And so it's one of those things where if you are publishing a game and you know for a fact you're going to probably have expansions for it down the road, if it does well, you have to take into consideration, will your consumers complain if they can't fit the expansion into the base game box? Will your consumers complain if they can't sleeve the game? Yes, that's a big thing. So Renegade Games, for example, I don't know if you have any Renegade game cards. Yes, Arboretum. So the Arboretum tray, if you actually look at the Arboretum tray, Renegade is smart. They are super slick. The reason the Renegade card games are that size, they're all actually the same size, and I'll talk about that in a second, is because you can actually sleeve those cards in a specific standard sleeve, and they will fit like exactly. Because when you sleeve cards, it increases the height of the deck in addition to the width and the depth.
Right.
And so they take into consideration when they manufacture those inserts and boxes how much space the product would take up sleeved.
Cool.
So that's one of the reasons why those are that way.
Yeah.
The reason point salad is bigger is cost. Honestly, there's a mentality in consumerisms that bigger is better.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a product that is that size, and then you have a product that is this size, and they're next to each other on the shelf, and they're the same price, consumers are more inclined to buy the larger box. I mean, if you look at Oink games, I don't know if you have any Oink games. Oink games are amazing, and they're tiny, and they're very expensive. This is a $25 game.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
$25 game.
I did not realize that.
It is filled to the brim with pieces.
Now, is that a 2-piece box?
Yeah.
Or, oh, okay. So it's a little bit of a heavier.
It's a 2-piece. It's a nice thick, but it is filled to the brim. This is the German copy, but this is Deep Sea Adventure, which is one of their more popular games in the U.S. $25 box, $25 game. But if you put this on a shelf next to this, and you say, "Oh, these are both $25," this is the one that people are going to buy. And it becomes a value thing, and it sucks. But that is one of the reasons why people make boxes bigger, is because of the perceived value. The other reason is because of shipping and manufacturing costs. And this is where we get into the sustainability standpoint. So, and also just packaging design and effectiveness. So we talked about the sleeving, we talked about expansion, we also talked about consumer expectations, which hobby gamers will tell you, oh, I would prefer small, blah, blah, blah. I understand that, hobby gamers. There's an uncomfortable truth, which is we are a minority. Most people don't have hundreds of board games crammed into their house. Most people have maybe 5. So space concerns are a concern, but the average consumer is more concerned about value than like size, unless you get excessive, right?
You were getting into the shipping cost of stuff a little bit. So I recently talked to a board game designer, first-time designer, did a Kickstarter. His game's called Solutions. I have a video of that. It was a recent video I just put up. And he was explaining for sustainable reasons he designed the game to fit in a standard rate postal box. So it is, actually, I'm not sure. It looks like
it's a little smaller than that.
Yeah. Like somewhere
it's
in between those two. But he made it so like it fits perfectly in there. So I'm imagining it's like a glove and there's no space to jiggle in there. Is that something that like you have to deal with? Like, is that kind of all of the problem of figuring out like, well, we need the boxes to fit in the bigger boxes and all be shipped together and not jiggle? Like, is that part of it? Is just that sizing and then shipping?
Yeah, so there's basically a very complicated formula when it comes down to figuring out what size box we use at HABA to put a game into. And part of that formula is what is the components of the game itself? What do those how much space do those components take up for shipping? And then how much space do those components take up after they have been like punched or the game has been set up? Right? And so a great example is Inspector Mouse, The Great Escape, which I noticed you did a review of the other day.
I very much like it.
Inspector Mouse, The Great Escape is kind of a standard medium HABA size box. And we use every inch of this box. We actually use the box as part of the gameplay. And so we had to make sure when we were deciding what size box we wanted to make sure that we used as much of the box as we could without having too much like dead space to make the playing seem odd. Because in the game, what you do, if you haven't watched
you should watch
Jona's video, go watch it. Yeah. But there's a grid in the box and there's a board on top with like a carousel thing. And at one point you lift it off and you have to interact with what's in the grid. Well, if we made this box deeper, if we went with one of our deeper boxes, we had to talk about and be concerned about, okay, well, will little hands or big hands be able to reach into a deeper box to interact with what's in the bottom of the grid? Or is this like the perfect size? And the answer is this is the perfect size.
I would agree.
We have to look at like, okay, well, if we're going to go with this size for when the box is being played, will this size work for when the box is being shipped? And then also, will it work when it's being stored? And when I say, does it work when the box is being shipped? What I mean is when you have the game unassembled and in its ship mode, where it has the punch boards, will things have enough room, or will they be secure enough so that they won't move around too much, right, to damage themselves? Because when you ship a game across an ocean or a country or wherever, stuff gets moved around and things like that. So if you have a pack of cards and it's a 40 card deck, that 40 card deck, if the shipping box gets like dropped or something, that 40 card deck can hit, I forget the pounds per pressure that it hits, but basically it can punch a hole through the side of the game box. Ooh. So you have to make sure when you're shipping it, it doesn't have a ton of space to bounce around and wiggle, because it'll damage the other components in addition to the box itself. This is one of the reasons why a lot of games actually have those really awful cardboard inserts that everybody hates. It's actually to reduce the amount of space the stuff inside has to become a projectile. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that's why it's there. The other reason is to support the punch boards. So the punch boards, if they wiggle or josh or like get like sideways or out of whack, the components might get punched out on accident by the other items that are bouncing around in the box, and then that's all going to get damaged, and then your replacement costs are going to go up. And whenever you have to do replacements, you're talking about the shipping for all of those replacement components, both to your distribution or sales center and then to the consumer. So you always want to reduce the amount of replacements you have to do, and good internal packaging design for transportation is part of that. And part of that design process is figuring out what size box the game has to be. We also talk about play value of the game, right? Because like we can talk about, okay, well, how much does it cost for us to physically manufacture a deck of cards, right? I'm not going to get into specifics, but let's say it's like $2, right? And then when you take into a consideration all of the other people who are going to sell this product, we have to charge more than $2, because we also have to take into consideration like the physical cost of the deck of cards might be $2, but how much did it cost for all the art on the cards?
Yeah.
How much did it cost to pay the designer for the design? How much did it cost to pay the marketing team for the marketing they're going to do? How much does it cost to pay for the facilities where our office staff works? How much does it cost to pay for the developer team? How much does it cost? You know, like all of these have to take into consideration. And then you also go into how much does it cost to get the product from the manufacturer? How much does it cost to get the product from the port to us? How much does it cost to get to distributors? How much does it cost to get from distributors to retailers? How much margin does a retailer want to make this product worth it? And so when you take all of that into consideration, you get your price in the end. And if the perceived value of a game is so low that your cost to manufacture the game, market the game, sell the game, design the game is so high, but the perceived value of the game is too low, you make no margin, and everybody else on the chain, the distributor and the retailer, also make no margin. And so one of the ways to help add perceived value is box size, which is another thing we talk about.
Right.
And also like high quality art and marketing. So that's why the Arboretum game is so pretty and cool. Because like if you look at Arboretum compared to Dutch Blitz from a component standpoint, they're kind of the same.
Yeah.
But like the one just seems better quality, you know? Like, and it is. The cardstock's better quality, the box is better quality, the art is better quality. Like it is better quality.
They are both tremendous games though, just for anyone that's wondering.
Yes. Oh, yes,
debatable.
definitely. Yeah.
But as far as, I totally take your point though. Yeah.
So, and that's kind of part of it. And then, in regards to the shipping part, to go back, I keep flipping back and forth.
That's okay.
When you talk about shipping it, that was all the conversation about the inside of the box. Now we have to talk about the outside of the box. So I actually have a small on-camera fittable example. This is a case pack. So a case pack is a plain cardboard box that is designed to hold a quantity of units of the games, and they're designed to fit in there insanely snug. like no wiggle room, no chafe or minimal chafing, which we talked about in the shrink wrap video. So this is a game that I've already taken 2 units out, so it's not gonna. But there are cardboard layers between every copy, and then you can kind of see there's very minimal room.
Oh yeah, very snug.
And yeah, when you have all 4, this case pack is 4 units. When you have all 4 units, it's right to the brim. There's no extra room. And so that's this game. One of the things with shipping is we want to make sure there's as little shifting and movement as possible during shipping. But we also want to make sure we aren't manufacturing a new style of case pack for every game we make. Because if we had to manufacture and have very snug shipping cartons made custom for every game that was ever produced in the history of gaming, the cost would be huge. And also the sustainability factor would be massive because you couldn't reuse those boxes. So these boxes, we actually use stickers instead of printing on the box what it is. But you can print on the box later. So if we order 10,000 of these boxes and then we decide, oh, we're not going to use them for the dragon game, let's use them for another game, we don't have to redesign a box, we don't have to do a new shipment, that kind of stuff. And it goes for all of our products, and it's also fairly common with other board game manufacturers. And I've talked about it once in a previous across the board. Box sizes used to be regulated because there was only a handful of box manufacturers in the entire world that were making hobby game boxes. And they made the same size boxes, and if you wanted a different box, too bad. Like, you were going to get the size there was a range that you could pick from, and that's what you got.
Gotcha.
And the reason they did that was because they could manufacture the boxes at scale, and then when a customer came in and said, oh, I would like a medium-sized box, they would be like, sure, and then they would just wrap it, and they would be done. And then they would have everything for that box already set. They would know what size paper wrap they needed to do. They would know what size shipping cartons they needed for the case packs. They knew how much space the game would take for shipping on containers and pallets. Like, they had that all mapped out. And so they could be like, oh, you want a medium-sized box? A medium-sized box is 6 units per case pack, and we can fit 70 case packs on a pallet, and this is how much. And if you want to order 3,000 units, you'll get 2 pallets. Like, they had it all laid out. And then whenever you wanted to do a custom game, none of that math would work anymore, and they'd have to recalculate it. And they were like, nope, not going to do it.
Wow.
Now it's very different. Gaming is bigger. There are more box manufacturers. And so you can do custom box sizes. But the companies who are larger, like HABA, AUG, Renegade, that kind of stuff, they actually, if you look at their collections, they do standard size boxes for the same reason, right? They know what the size is. They know how much it's going to cost for case packs. They know how much it's going to cost for a pallet. They know how many units on a pallet. They know how many pallets they need for a specific print run. So it's all formulated and figured out. And they've already purchased all of the machining tools, patterns, everything they need for that. And if they have any left over from a previous game, they can use them, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's all considered. The other part of the factor that I didn't get into is also when you talk about shipping is you have to think about weight.
Yeah.
So when you ship anything, you have to look at the size of the container and you have to look at the weight of the container. And there's thresholds. And so it's basically like, as long as you stay under this size and this weight, you're in this price bracket. And as soon as one of those variables exceeds that threshold, your cost goes up. So you can have the world's tiniest box, but if you are over the weight threshold, you have to pay the same amount for shipping a bigger box. And so some of the considerations is, okay, if we need to make this game and we could fit it in this box, but it's going to be as heavy as, say, this box, let's just make it this box. Because as soon as you make the weight heavy enough that you're in this shipping price point, that means that you're paying more for shipping. That means your overall cost for the game has increased, which means that you probably want to be able to sell it for more And then we get into that whole box size equals value kind of shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wow. Okay. This is very interesting. And it just is another illustration of how complicated manufacturing and producing something cool that people will want to buy, how complicated it is. Yeah, because I really walked away from my conversation with Sam Levick-Levy, and he was saying how like he's a mechanical engineer. I think that's what he said he was. So he's all about like I was all about making it super efficient. And so he started with box size, and he went from there in the design, and he said ultimately keeping it small has a smaller footprint, especially when, keeping it to a specific size kind of resolves the issue. But that is for a Kickstarter, so it's a really small, process, or a really small like audience that it's probably going out for.
Yeah, it's more a hobby.
Yeah. So I'm kind
He's not looking to put it in like Target. Right? Because this is the thing. So this game, for example, this Oink game, they actually picked it up and put it in Target. And Target said, no, we won't take it that size. Because it'll get lost. It's easier for shop theft. And then people won't perceive it as the value we need. So there's actually a special Target edition, which I actually kind of wish I had just for like the collector in me.
Right.
That is larger. It's actually closer to... Well, that's on the floor now. It's closer to this size at Target, and it's the same price. Actually, they made the Target one cheaper because it's mass produced.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a hobby versus mass market.
Yeah. I think all these little games, it's very like I can totally see the appeal. Like I love my Arboretum game, and it feels like a game. I'm like, this is one of my board games. This is one of my card games. Like, but the environmentalist in me would like to see things done more efficiently and like not have this extra material in waste. Like it does take extra material to make those boxes bigger. And if all the components are like kind of sized up a little, and then the extra shrink wrap, and then
no, it's a great consideration. And one of the things that you kind of have to look at, and Grant Roderick did a great blog post about this years ago. He Hyperbole, I think, was his blog. I don't know if he still has it up, but he is an independent game designer, and he's been signed a couple times, but he decided he was going to do small print run Kickstarters just himself. And he looked into tuck boxes versus 2-piece boxes for kind of a similar concern. He was like, from a price efficiency standpoint and an environmental standpoint, tucked boxes are better. But he looked into market comparison, and then he did his own like stress testing. And what he ended up deciding and coming to the conclusion is because the product was for a hobby market, and because the hobby market prioritizes, this goes back to our shrink wrap conversation, the hobby market prioritizes nice, neat, mint condition boxes. The problem is that the amount of dings and dents and replacement concerns on a tuck box just out of the gate are higher with the tuck box than they are with the 2-piece box. And then at the same point, because he was doing a limited print run, one and done, this game is out and I will never print it again ever in the history of the world, he wanted the product to last and be able to like have multiple owners, multiple players, multiple users, and kind of just like live in the hobby as like this niche one-off limited print run game for decades. And so from that consideration, he was like, okay, yeah, no, 2 pieces win. And so then you have to look into it from that angle is Dut Splits is amazing. In my lifetime, I have owned 3 copies of Dut Splits.
Right? Yes.
Okay.
I've had at least 3 as well.
Right? So, like, I've had 3 copies of Dut Splits in my life. I've had 1 copy of Rhino Hero.
Yeah.
And Rhino Hero gets a lot of play in my life. My favorite time playing Rhino Hero was with a 3-year-old who was helpful, and she was like, oh, the ceiling cards have to be folded too. And so she was folding the ceiling cards.
Oh my gosh.
They're not meant to be folded. And so I fixed them. She only folded like 4. And then I was like, we call them the hard mode time. We still have them. But this was before I worked for HABA. I wrote HABA and was like, hey, this happened. Do you have replacements? And they were like, oh yeah. And so they just mailed me replacement cards. But like, aside from that incident,
Yeah, it's the same one.
it's the same Rhino Hero I've
Yeah.
had since it released 5 years ago. And I've bought another, I've had a Dutch Blitz that lasted less than 5 years. Like,
Yeah.
so, you
Yeah.
know,
And I mean, that's totally part of the conversation is like we were saying, like, if it's slightly more disposable, they're designing it with that in mind. You're going to go run out and buy a new one when you want a new one. And then a game like this is kind of like, I mean, not to romanticize it, but it's a little bit of an heirloom. Like this, could possibly, as long as you have respectable gamers at the table, could last a very long time. And
yep.
so I think that's really an important part of the conversation of being more eco-friendly is investing in something that will last for years and years and years. So now I don't know what to think. But I know there are games that are designed and they're like in giant boxes when they could be in like, something more reasonable. Those games.
I'm gonna pick fun at one of my favorite games. I love this game, and I will fight anyone who says it's not a good game. All right, this is one of my most beloved games. I own 3 copies, and I absolutely think I own all 3. There, I have one. I travel with one. It's in my quiver. I have one in the home collection, and then I have one in the convention collection. Anyway, It is Rise of Augustus. And I forget who published it, and I forget who, but it's been republished under a new brand. The license got sold, it's got rethemed, etc. It's now coming in a smaller, more reasonable box. But I absolutely love Rise of Augustus. I did a review on it with my friend Ed Baraf. It's on my YouTube channel. The box is insanely, stupidly huge. It is the standard board game hobby box, like the 12-inch by 12-inch box. It's like 2.5 inches deep, right? It is the standard design box. It's Hurricane. Hurricane did the publishing on that one, and I think it came out in like 2013, 2012. It is a card game with some wooden meeples, and it comes and some cardboard tiles, and it comes with a draw bag because in the game you draw tiles out of a bag. You can fit the entire game in the draw bag. And that's what I do, and I put it in my quiver. And it's in this massive box. I know the reason why it's in this massive box. The reason that it's in this massive box is because it was designed and published in 2012, 2013, when box sizes were standardized. And like, this was the size box that you got when you were buying a $30, $40 game. It's not the case anymore. But it's one of those things where occasionally I'll see somebody will sell a used copy and somebody will buy it and then they'll be like, look how much dead space. And I'm like, yep. So I am happy to say that most of the examples that I know are from older style print runs and things like that. Yeah, a lot of companies are moving forward. If you look at more modern game box sizes and the price points of those game boxes, let's look at Azul. Yeah. Azul does a great job finding a box that's traditionally a little bit smaller, but they do that $40 price point, and it's worth it. Nobody would say that box there's a little dead air, but like not enough to be like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
You know?
It's reasonable.
And you could say Century Spice Road, same dealio. They add value with the little cup things, which are practical. A little unnecessary, but they're there. But that's an example of they've resized and made a standardized box size that fits the value of the game and also gives them a good margin for sale. Then you look at Plan B games. I'm just going to pick on Eggert Spiel, so that's Plan B right now, I guess. You look at Great Western Trail. Great Western Trail, they have a new version coming out. The new version is the same size box as the old version, which is that classic 12 by 12. And I believe they're charging $50 for that game. And I don't think anybody would argue that that is not a good size box for that game or a good price, given the size of the board, because it's a 4-piece board. And then you have the cards, and then you have the tokens, and then you have the meeples. It's like, yeah, they could do like a smaller box, like a less deep. But then you get into the whole... They have a standard size box size for their company, and that's the one it fits in. That's like the smallest box that it fits in, right? Because if they put that game into the Azul size box, would the game board fit, or would they have to make it a 6-fold? And then if you make it a 6-fold, is it deeper? And then like, what about the punch boards? And what about the meeples? And what about the cards? And then like, are you cramming it all in? And like, how efficient will that be? And,
Yeah.
you know, those kind of considerations that you have to think about when you look at how the game is shipped for sales, and then how you store it once you've punched it, right? And then also just like, if you make the board smaller, do you make the typeface smaller? Does that make it harder to play, considering how many tiles you're putting on that thing? Like, you know?
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I do think that if there's a company, I can't think of anybody to mind right now that's manufacturing a game with a ton of dead air. Everything that I can think of that has a lot of dead air in it is old school, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like it's from like 5 years ago. And there's some games that are still coming out now that were published and designed 5-6 years ago, and they're just using those same files until they can do a redesign. Because whenever you do a redesign, there's a lot of money that goes into that, you know, and a lot of time and a lot of marketing effort and that kind of stuff. So that's another, I mean, that's what Great Western Trail is currently going through. I just can't think of anything.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just say, any viewers out there, if you can think of like a culprit, or not a culprit, but someone who's kind of bad about designing games to be overly oversized, and it seems like there's a reasonable reason that doesn't count, but if someone's being really bad about it, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
And
I think
we will talk about it. We'll talk about the next time.
The most common culprit, I feel, is card games.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel card games.
I mean, going through my collection, I do have. Oh gosh.
No, you got games on the floor.
I do. Las Vegas was just
I love Las Vegas.
It's prime.
There's a
it's
new
dice.
But this is a great example. I have that game. I love that game. I actually have the expansion. I made a custom foam core insert. They redesigned the box in the new version.
Okay. I mean, I do have a nice insert, but like nothing like it's always
old
looks
school.
Like this. Yeah.
So this is the thing. So Alea, that manufacturer, it's out of Germany. They that box size is one of their standard size boxes. And that insert is actually semi-standardized for them. So if you actually look at that insert, one of the reasons is it doesn't do an amazing job is because they designed that insert to work for several of the games that they manufacture that are in the same size box.
Yeah, it doesn't look very custom.
Yeah, it's not. It's old school, right? Like that's how you used to do it
because you were limited with.
Well, and also hobby games were not as like money making in the day. Like, if you look at how many publishers were around, small publishers were not, like, glitzy and glammy. Like, you know? I was going to point out one example of a game that we might get flagged at HABA that has a lot of dead air. And that's Hammer Time.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Love it. But I want to talk about why. So, first of all, yeah, there's some dead air in here. But the reason we've gone with the tall box is because of the hammer.
Mm-hmm. You have to have something to aim at.
Yeah, and then that's it. The reason we went with the bigger, deeper box instead of a shallow box is because in this game, you're hitting the side of the box. So you actually turn the box upside down and you don't have the lid on, and there's fancy art. Jona's done a video of this too.
It's a really cute game.
You hit the box, and it's designed for 5 and up, so you need a little bit of space to hit the box. And that's kind of why. And we also didn't do a square because 1, it would be bigger. And then 2, with a square, you'd have more surface area. So it would be harder to get the gems off. So that's why we went with the deeper rectangle and not the less deep or the shallower square.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because the box functions almost as a board game, as a component of the game or a toy, however you want to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important. And that's that part of that. Yeah, that's part of that formula where it's like, when you're considering box size, it's like, what do you need for shipping? What do you need for storage? What do you need for gameplay? And not every company involves the box as part of a gameplay, right? And we definitely don't. So yeah, but that's an example of like why you might look at a game and see it and then just be like, this is a lot of dead air. Why does this have dead air? Well, because this reason. There's usually a reason, and you just don't really consider it. Like this one, I'm going to tattle on myself. So this one is a hobby game. This one's out of print. It's animal upon animal memory stacking. But this is a great example because it's the same size box as animal upon animal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you don't even use the box for playing. So I can't use that as justification for why we need a big box. And there's like a board in here, but you don't need it to play. And there's a good amount of dead air, because all you really need to play is this bag of wooden bits.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if I make it cost, I can get it into maybe less than half the box.
Yeah, that's true.
Problem is, there's a bag of solid wooden bits. So then we get into that weight problem.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
yeah, so that's one of those where it's like, yes, absolutely, we could make this a smaller box from every functional standpoint, but then we would still be paying a lot of money to ship a box that has a bunch of solid wood in it, and then people would get upset because we would have this very kind of expensive small box, and it's that perceived value thing. So
Yeah,
that's
gotcha.
I wanted to share that one because that's a specific example.
Okay, I love it. Well, thank you
Of
so
the weight
much
problem.
for explaining all of this. When I first started talking about like eco-friendly board game, I mean I share this in my one video where I talk about rating games from an Earth, or I'm giving games Earth stars and all of that, and I say how I didn't really know what I was talking about. I just wanted to talk about it, and thankfully you have been gracious with your time and teaching me a lot, and other people who work in sustainability. So I feel like I've learned a lot. But initially, box size was one thing I was gonna really focus on. And after speaking to you
important.
and considering more manufacturing, like the whole process of it, I realized there's a lot more going on there. So yeah, so I've learned a lot, and I have changed my ways. I'm not so judgy on the boxes.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things. A lot of it's just history. Like the great thing about games is they do last a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's games that are for sale, new, sitting on shelves that were manufactured 5 years ago, you know, and they've just been shuffled from warehouses to warehouses to warehouse. But the games have such a long longevity. From like value, both in games don't go out of style. Well, they do, but they don't.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same point, like there are some like Rise of Augustus. I love Rise of Augustus.
I have to play this game. I've never even heard of it.
It's bingo. It's Roman bingo. My nieces love it.
Okay.
Every time I play it with kids, it's great.
Is it available?
You could find a used copy.
Okay.
So easy.
Okay.
Or you could probably find a discount copy.
You could give me some of your like hanging around. It sounds like you have a lot of them.
Yeah. But that's a great example of like, if you are a modern gamer who is newer to the hobby and you're super interested, but then if I just like handed you this game and was like, I love this game, it's amazing, and then you looked at the box size and you would be like, what? And it's like, well,
it's old.
It's an old game. That's why. Like the newer version is they've slimmed down the box by a lot. I think the box is like this big. So it's a more modern size box, and they do a better job with like the component sizing and style and things like that. So it's yeah, and that's one of the things that you just have to consider when you think of a game, and before you go into like, why is this way? It's like, well, when was it made? You know? So
yeah, for sure.
But there's a lot of companies that could do better. Just, you know, Point Solid. I love Point Solid, but why? That is a bid for perceived value of cost. They could have made it a slightly smaller. Just, I love the game. AEG's doing great stuff, but that one is what it is. Like,
it was oversized. Yeah.
It's a little oversized, and that's why. And I'm not going to, you know, and there's reasons why it is the size it is. What is important to you as a consumer is different from what is important to the manufacturer/publisher. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of, yeah.
But all right. Well, thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. And we'll maybe have you on for some other manufacturing special show.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm not sure what else we could talk about. We got wood. We could talk about wood a little
Well,
bit.
that might be helpful. That might actually be really interesting.
We could talk about the difference between FSC and PFSS.
Yes.
I'm so bad about acronyms.
I would actually really like to learn more about that. And also, I've been realizing that it's hard to tell linen cards from linen textured cards.
Linen finish, yeah.
So I would like to, maybe we could do a rundown of like, how do you identify
Oh, I don't even know if I can
real
identify.
linen? Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know.
I feel like we're geeking
about
out right
this
now.
right
Okay,
now.
okay,
I think we
this
should
is
get
what we're
out
gonna do.
because I'm like, you got me interested. What is?
I know we're gonna rub it. Okay, so anyone in the comments, let us know what you think. What would be a great discussion in the future? Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.
No.
Bye.
Bye.